There is one clip I always go back to anytime I am lost or struggling. That clip is from the Jocko Underground podcast, and it has helped me move forward when times are difficult, more times than I could possibly count. If you are experiencing any type of struggle, then pay attention and embody this message because it will help you tremendously.
This is the Jocko Underground podcast. We're on number 62. This is number 62. I'm sitting here with Echo Charles. I was talking to a guy at camp. Well, pretty much been to every camp that I think I've been to. Jiu-jitsu camp, this is, by the way, Immersion camp. And good guy. We've always hung out, and I've kind of watched his growth and journey, for lack of a better word, over the past few years. Anyways, this time, shows up to camp. We're talking, and he's going through a really hard time. Like a surprisingly, when you see someone on a trajectory and you're watching their trajectory and like, oh, this is a good trajectory. And then all of a sudden they're just off that trajectory. Mm-hmm. Like it's like the space shuttle Columbia. Like you think everything's going good and then it just goes sideways. So that's what's going on. He's a former military guy. He's been out of the military for a pretty long time. But, he started his own business and he's doing pretty well. But, it was a lot of hard work, like a tough business, a lot of hard work, kids, the whole 9 yards, everything's, this is just the trajectory. Like, oh yeah, you're doing well. You've kind of pivoted a little bit, made some adjustments. You got the wife, you got a bunch of kids. And if you would have asked me, if you would have said, where do you think my life is right now? I would have been like, oh, okay, well, you probably expanded your business a little bit more. You probably did, this is, but it was like, no, wife wants divorce, like just total change, right? Just a drastic change in direction in his life. So as we're talking through it, and we spent like an hour talking, as we're talking through it, like at one point he's like, I might have to sell the business, because they built up this business, and he might, in order to settle with her, he might have to sell it, just like sell the business. And which to me was weird, because if you sell the business, you have no more income, so it's not like you can sell. And he goes, no, well, I'll probably have to sell the business, give her a big chunk of the payout, and then I'll have to work at Home Depot just to pay child support. And I don't know what I'm going to do. I just can't figure out, he's like, I'm a smart guy. I think about it, but I just can't figure out what to do. And so I'm sitting there listening. I'm thinking about it for a while. And, finally, I said, I'm not smart, but I know what I would do. And he was like, well, what? I said, if I was in your situation, I know what I would do. And he was like, what? And I said, I would start walking. And he's like, well, what do you mean? And I said, here, let me explain. This is what's going on with you right now. You just woke up. Like, you just came to consciousness, and you don't know where you are. And you're in the middle of the woods. And you're looking around, and you see trees, and it's like thick. You can't even tell where the sun is, right? But you know you're in the woods. Mm-hmm. You don't know where to go. And so what I would do is I would start walking. I would just pick like a direction, and I would start walking. And as I'm walking, I would eventually find a little terrain that's going downhill, and I'd follow that terrain downhill, and eventually I'd hit a stream. And the stream would actually be a tributary into a river, and then from the river, I would follow the river until I'd hit a road, and when I'd hit a road, eventually I'd follow the road to a town somewhere, and I'd figure things out, right? I'd figure out where I was, and I'd be back, and I'd be able to get food, and I'd put everything together. But I said, what you're doing, and this is what I could tell from this conversation, I said, what you're doing is you're just standing there looking around, and you're trying to figure out where the town is, where civilization is, and you're waiting, trying to guess, and looking around and looking for clues, but there's no freaking clues. You're in the middle of the woods. There's no clues. There's no clues, literally. You have to go and find it. Civilization, the town, the thing is not going to come to you. You have to start walking. So that's what I would do. And look, obviously there's a hint of like iterative decision making, right? You don't know where you are. You don't know what to do. Start moving in some direction, and that'll give you some clues or some indication or some immediate feedback about where you are, and you can start assembling a better picture of what's happening. So I know might not be the smartest person in the world, and you're smart, but you're not going to be able to do anything without doing something. So you're going to have to start walking. And then I went back to this Home Depot piece, and I said, listen, if I was in your shoes, okay, I'd go get a job at Home Depot. And I was like, yeah, and you know what? I got my job at Home Depot. My aisle would be the freaking squared away aisle. And after like a week and a half, it'd be the most squared away aisle in Home Depot. And I said, in a few weeks, the store manager would look at me and he'd be like, hey, can you run these 3 aisles? They'd give me 3 aisles, and then they'd give me 7 aisles, and then they'd give me 12 aisles, and then they give me the front of the store. And then eventually they'd be like, hey, can you just run this store? Because I'd be busting my ass, and I'd be making things happen, and I'd be building relationships with people. And then eventually they'd be like, hey, we want you to run this district with all the Home Depots in this district. And then they go, we want you to take this region. And eventually they'd be like, hey, we want you to be the CEO of Home Depot. And we're laughing, right? Because I'm not that arrogant, but I was making a point. But I told this guy, I was like, look, you see working at Home Depot as a punishment, and I see it as an opportunity. As an opportunity. And by the way, Home Depot, there's like, you've heard of Home Depot millionaires, right? It's a real thing.
No, what is it?
Home Depot millionaires, like in the early days of Home Depot, you could take stock options when Home Depot wasn't that big. And a lot of people that were cashiers and, cleaners in the aisles, they took stock and, now they're millionaires. Okay. But that reframing the way you're looking at things and seeing opportunities instead of seeing punishments, and instead of seeing downturns in your life, seeing opportunities, it's just going to have such a much better impact on the way where you get to. Because, go into like you hear Jordan Peterson talking about like aiming, and you got to take aim, right? Yeah. Well, this is a version of that, right? Yeah. When I get in there and I think, hey, I'm going to make this aisle look awesome. Yeah. Look at what I'm aiming at. I'm aiming to improve and get better and do a good job. If I go in there, this sucks. What am I aiming at? Yeah. I'm aiming at this sucking. That's actually where I'm going to, the same thing when we used to do offensive driving. Mm-hmm. And when you're driving a car, if you start looking at like, if you got to go between obstacles and you start looking at one of those obstacles, you're going to hit that obstacle. That's, there's like a tendency that you're going to hit the obstacle. You're going to go where what you're looking at. Yeah. Same thing with this. If you think this job is going to suck, well, guess what? The job is actually going to suck now. Mm-hmm. And you're not going to do it well. And you're not going to get promoted. And you're not going to be given more responsibility. You're not going to be given any opportunities. Mm-hmm. So just be careful of that. I think that's a good lesson for everybody. This happens throughout. This is what happened when I got to SEAL Team 1. Back in the day, got SEAL Team 1. They're like, clean toilets. I'm like, cool. Let me rock and roll. I'm going to do this really well. Do you think I wanted to clean toilets? Of course not. But I was like, okay, that's what we're doing. Mm-hmm. Let's do this. One of my friends had a different team made like his web gear into like custodial attack mode. He put like had like a holster with cleaner in it, another one's like a toilet brush, he's like running around ready to respond. Mm-hmm. He's having fun with it. Mm-hmm. And if he was just poking fun at it, it would have been like, well, that might be a risky move, but he was doing it like, no, I'm ready to go. He actually was fired up about it. So embrace it. So that's what I'm saying. If you're in a spot and you don't know what to do and you're not sure where to go, and you don't know where the right direction is, start walking and start looking for opportunities. And they'll show up. That's my word of the day. Echo Charles.
Yeah, agree. Some people talk about that where it's like, he's far more ahead than, it's because it's not, some people, they look at it as, oh my gosh, I got to start all over, whatever. And a common that thing that I've heard is you're technically not starting all over because of all of your past experience and knowledge or whatever. So even waking up in the woods, like that's perfect, such a perfect. You ever watched the movie Memento?
Yes, I did, but my memory of it's kind of vague, oddly enough, right?
Yeah, exactly right. So, and the way they present that movie is like in backwards clips,
Right.
which is kind of they try to mimic his thought process and the way his brain works because he doesn't have short-term memory. So he'll just sort of come to, just like in the woods or whatever, and something's either going on or he's at a certain place and he doesn't know how he got there. So he kind of refers to his tattoos as like notes. So that's kind of like in your analogy where the tattoos is your past experience and knowledge.
Right,
You know,
which
you,
you
can
have,
look at them and whatever. You don't have any assets. You don't have like everything that you lost is gone. It's gone.
But you have knowledge, which is more powerful.
Exactly right. Only the knowledge in your head, though. You don't have like the business. You don't have, you know, the access to all that. So that's gone. That's like the guy's memories, you know. So those are gone. He knows only what he can do moving forward, and he can use all the knowledge that he has tattooed. So it's kind of the same deal, in a way. That's how it struck me, anyway. So yeah, he's kind of starting ahead.
Yeah, definitely starting ahead.
Yeah,
and starting with no baggage.
Yes, that's
which is
deal.
another way to look at it,
Yeah,
right?
age and kids and stuff like those are factors or whatever. But yeah, man, that's such a good way to look at it. Where when you say avoiding or like the driving thing, where you're like, what'd you call it? Offensive
driving. Don't look at the obstacle.
Yeah, so it's like you can't actively avoid an obstacle. Just don't look for the obstacle. Look for something else. Like look for how you say opportunity or
Yep. Drivable terrain. Have you heard me talk about that before?
Drivable terrain.
Drivable terrain.
Exactly
You're
right.
driving. You're like an accident ahead of you.
Yeah.
And you're just looking for drivable terrain. Where can I take this vehicle where I'm not going to die?
Yeah.
And that's a real positive thing. So that's another thing. You start walking in the woods.